Okay, Louise, your session. Take it away.
Okay, thanks a lot. I really appreciate you all coming along tonight, and I'm happy to have a chance to share some of my ideas and methods with you, and I'd like to hear about some of yours later in the session. Like probably all of you, I didn't have experience teaching 100% online and had only dabbled in the past with this kind of thing. I do have a call background, but not for actually running the classes. I've always thought of call and maul as something that was more of a support rather than the medium of instruction. So in some ways I was lucky, because when my universities told me we'd be going online, I didn't freak out, because it wasn't like I was being thrown completely into the deep end. But at the same time, it was something that was very challenging, because I knew that there would be many obstacles to overcome in getting my students to where I wanted them to be, for me to learn how to use new systems like one of the in-house learning management systems that's at my university, and various other tools. And also overcoming some of the things that we take for granted that we can do in a physical space, and figuring out ways how to do them in a virtual space. And on top of that, I'm teaching first-year students at university level, and these poor students have just finished high school, not seeing their campus, not being able to make friends. So that was also a top priority for me, to help the first-year students to be able to form bonds with each other, and to have some kind of rapport with me as well. So when I was doing all of my planning for the courses that I'm teaching, I had these things in mind. How can I make my courses interactive and engaging? How can I make sure students don't get lost too much? I have to say too much. I expect they would all get lost at some point. And how do I also make sure I don't get overwhelmed? Because I had a very young child at home, primary school age child at home with me while I was planning and while I was teaching. So there was a lot going on. And today I'm going to show you a couple of the activities that I did in detail, and just explain a few more of them in less detail. The first one is for the writing class that I have. So you could use maybe the reaction buttons to give a thumbs up if you have a writing class that you teach. Anybody? Okay, and this is something I do with my students all the time. I have some classes of 30 students, and my computer only lets me see, well, both of you, I have 24 now. I can only see 20 per page. It depends on the specs of your computer. So I would often be flicking between screens to get this kind of information, or using the poll function. But as I'm not hosting this section, I can't use the polls. So yeah, I can see some people here who are doing writing classes. So with the writing classes, I did make some videos to share with students, but my main concern, and the thing I want to share with you today, was not how I taught the writing so much, but as how I gave feedback on their writing. Typically, I had received a paper version, and I'd written feedback on it on the second draft. They did peer feedback in the first draft. And I gave it to them, and then they had time in class to read it, and I could talk with them about any questions they had about it. Those who understood everything just started working on it. Those who wanted to talk to me had a bit of one-to-one time. Then they do the third draft, and then I check that, and they get graded on that one. And in a face-to-face classroom, even the small thing of collecting each piece of paper from a student compared to collecting it from an online learning management system is different in terms of time. So you've got to deal with a lot of extra admin just by doing it online. And I had played around in the past with different ways to give feedback. I'd done things like commenting and annotating. I'd put a lot of shortcuts into my computer so that I could just type 3 letters and a whole sentence comes out that I'd normally be saying to students. I'd done a lot of this over the years. And in the end, I'd always gone back to doing it by hand, because I found it easier to put things exactly on the page where I wanted to do it. But this time, obviously, I didn't have that choice. And so I decided to start using some software called Screencast-O-Matic. Have you heard of it? Can I have a thumbs up? Anyone who knows this? Okay, so we have a few people who've used it. Yeah, I saw it on Facebook. Someone had recommended it. And I mean, it basically just records what's on your screen. And you can do this with Zoom. I could, like we're now, make a recording of the screen, and that would be fine too. But the reason I chose Screencast-O-Matic is because I can upload it straight to my YouTube channel automatically with one click. And then the link that it produces can be given to students, and it's an unlisted link. So I'm going to show you how to do that today. First of all, I need to screen share. So
You should be good to screen share, Louise.
yeah, I think I'm good to screen share. I'm going to try and share the whole desktop, I think. Okay. So first of all, where you come is this here. You can see maybe I can put in the chat the URL for it. Screencast-O-Matic, kind of catchy.
That's the free version, Louise?
Yeah, this is the free version. There we go. It's in the chat now. And you can see down the bottom here, it says launch free recorder. And I think the first time I used it, I downloaded it. So you may need to do that. It was in April, and there was a lot happening in April, but I do vaguely recall that I recorded it. I downloaded it the first time. But after that, it's there, and each time you just press launch free recorder. So generally what I do is I open up my students' assignment, like this one here. You can see this one is student ABC. They did their draft today just as it was due. It's draft 2, and they have an awesome title and a pretty good paragraph. And I usually get them to put the word count down the bottom. So I've taken 2 approaches, and I'm still not sure which one I like the best, but I'll tell you which approaches I've used so far. One was that I would read first, and I would go along and use something like this to highlight parts that I wanted to talk about so that I could talk with students when I'm doing the screencast. And the other one was that I would go along and do that during the screencast. They both had pros and cons for me. Doing it in advance, I could go through it and read it carefully and have time to think about it without feeling the pressure of the camera running. But in longer essays, that was fine for paragraph level. When I started getting into 800-word essays, I couldn't remember everything that I'd highlighted, the reason for it, and I felt really caught out on the camera. So I'm not really sure which one's going to work best for others. I'll let you think about that yourselves if you do want to try it. But basically, what I do is I open the screen recorder, and you can see it'll say recorder launched. And then you have to close off the part that has the recorder here. And you can move it to whatever shape you want. So in this case, I'm going to keep the whole of the Word document on there because I often want to show them how to center things or how to change the spacing or the margins or that type of thing as well. And that's so much easier to explain if you've got it right there in front of you. It's a huge advantage. So then you just press record, which I'll do now. Gives you a countdown. And it's going live. And always at the beginning, I start off with a greeting to the student. Oh, thanks, student ABC. I really enjoyed reading what you shared on this topic. And I will point out a couple of things that I thought were really great. And I think that's really important for us to do because they're trusting us with their ideas and their work. And I know how I feel when I write things in any of my foreign languages. So opening up, especially when you haven't met people, with that positive encouragement right at the start in the video, I think is an important thing. And then I say to them, okay, so now I'm going to offer you some ideas to consider to strengthen this, or something like that. And then I go through it bit by bit. And so I might say about awesome title, that their title is awesome, but that they need to make sure that they capitalize the keywords. And then I would remind them to put an indent at the beginning. And if things get messy like this, I would show them how to do that and talk them through it. I will point out here that there is an issue with the punctuation and that they need a space here. A lot of my students, for some reason, don't put a space after numbers. And then I would talk about the content or any kind of grammar issues that came up. And at the end, I would just click this button here. And I can go back and review it if I want. I don't. I have a lot of students and a lot of writing, and I'm not going to listen to myself talking about that writing, but you can. And if you make a mistake, you can go back a little bit and you can truncate it to the last place. So I've occasionally done that, like when my daughter has walked in, I've needed to do this at times, not because they can see her, but just because she's very noisy. And then I choose done. And after I do that, I have some options. The editing option you have to pay for, but again, I don't want to edit. And then you have the save or upload option. And okay, down here, I think I'm going to move this out of the way. So down here, we've got the video file that will save straight to your computer. Or you can upload it to Screencast-O-Matic, which I've never done, and they will store it for you there, I presume. Or you can upload to YouTube. And this is the option that I chose. So when we do this, it's quite simple. The first time it's going to ask you for the YouTube account that you want to upload it to. And you have some choices. And I choose the unlisted because I don't want the students' work to be searchable. But I also didn't want to have it as private because then I have to register all email addresses, and they may have extra email addresses and not log on with the right one, and it would be a bit of a hassle. So I use the unlisted option and then I publish. And it takes a little while. The maximum length you can do for this free version is 15 minutes. And I don't need that. I did need actually that for some of the videos I've made, but not for a paragraph or something like this. Some of the essays, I did talk a little bit too long, but 15 minutes was plenty of time. So you can see it goes little bit by little bit along here, and where it brings you, I'm just gonna move that to the bottom of the screen. Where it brings you is your own YouTube channel. So you can see here, that what I do is I label with the student's name and their class and whatever topic the essay was on. And you can kind of see just by, without, there are privacy issues, so I won't show you any of them. The students wrote these with their full names on them. But from here, you can just see that there are different parts that are highlighted, and it gives you an idea of how it could be quite different for different students. And then all I need to do is grab the link from the top. And after I grab the link, I'm able to share that with the students. Now, I generally share that with the students through the learning management system that I'm using. But sometimes I also just share it in a private chat during a Zoom class. So if they're working on something else, I can just copy paste, flick between my private YouTube channel and their private chat. The only issue with that is you can't do that when they're in breakout rooms, because when they're in breakout rooms, you can't private chat with somebody. So it has to be a task where they're all in the main room for me to be able to do it privately, because I don't want to share the feedback with everybody. I want to give the students the option to do that. I've said to them, you can show other people your feedback if you'd like to, but here is your private link. You can decide what to do with it. So I haven't looked at the chat at the moment, but if anyone has questions about this part.
Louise?
Yeah.
Okay, from Carmela around, well, just right now. So her question goes, the link is specific to each video, so
yeah.
Only the one student can see it, right?
Yep, that's right. So if a student has the link, they can keep watching that video as many times as they want. Until I personally remove the link. I haven't removed any of them, but it'll stay up there and it's non-searchable. And the nice thing about it is that captions come up on YouTube. This is another reason why I wanted to use YouTube. Actually, let me show you, because the video we just made is there. So I'll screen share again and let you see what happens once it goes up. So I would generally open up the video, and as soon as I do, I have the link at the top, so I can copy paste here. And it's going live. And always at the beginning, right, I start off and with, I can put the captions. Reading to the student. Oh, thanks, student ABC. I really enjoyed reading what you and change the playback shared on this topic. And I will point out a couple of things that I thought captions aren't ready yet. And I think, so the captions aren't ready on it yet, but As you can see, they have the options of the playback speed. I think the captions tend to take, it's just uploaded now, so maybe the captions take a little time after that, but I've watched with the captions and my students have told, because I wanted to know, was it picking up my voice correctly? If it wasn't, I would tell students don't use captions, but I watched a few of them and it was very accurate. I would say over 90-something% accurate with the way I speak. So I said to them, use the captions if you think they'll help you, and they'll be right most of the time. Any other questions? Does it show the video?
Okay, one more.
No, it doesn't show. Lisa show the video of you. No, that's only because right now I was screen sharing and I had you guys on there with me as part of the Zoom. Generally, no, I wouldn't have Zoom open. So the only thing that you'd see is the Word document, and that's it.
Okay, two questions from participants list. Scott McClellan, you're up.
Yeah, hello. I agree with you. I did the same sort of thing where I annotate the second draft and not the final draft. But my question is, if you're going to go to the trouble of recording a video, are you getting any feedback from the students directly to know that they've watched this and that they've taken it in, or that they've...
Yeah. So then they have a chance to watch the video. And then I have synchronous Zoom classes. And the class after they've had the video, I make part of that class optional for them to stay if they have questions. And generally, I'd say, I don't know, like 15% of the students stay and ask questions, and others just go ahead and they're stays and are happy with that feedback. So the other way I know that they've been watching it is that they've made changes that were suggested during it. So yeah, I think I also had quite a number of students write in the end of semester feedback that they found the YouTube videos useful for them, and that they weren't expecting that kind of, they were kind of touched, they said. They weren't expecting that kind of individual feedback in this kind of environment. So it was a way of reaching out. And don't get me wrong, it took time. But I think in the first semester of a one-year course, I was really laying foundations that I think I can then build on for next semester. So it was quite time consuming in the first semester, but I think in the second semester, it won't be as much. I've become more familiar with how to do it. And yeah, Scott's baby is gorgeous. And also I've covered some of the things that I don't need to repeat the same kind of formatting stuff to students now. So some of the minor things that I needed to cover repeatedly in the first semester, I don't think I'll need to repeat next time. So it'll become smoother.
Steve Henneberry.
Okay, yeah, I noticed when you, first of all, thank you, Louise. This has been interesting introduction to how, a way to deal with student writing assignments. I noticed when you clicked the record button earlier that there was an option for record screen, record camera, record both.
So if you want to be on there, I suppose you could be.
So my question is, because just prior to this was the OBS presentation about the whole idea of putting your head in the corner and you can talk. My question was, like, if you wanted to, could you, or have you ever tried using both so that your head's down in the corner while you're explaining what you're editing on the screen? And if you haven't tried it, can you try it now and see if what it looks like?
I could do it, but we don't have time now. So have a play around.
Okay.
Because there's some other things I want to cover. But yeah,
Okay.
Good. For me, with it being a writing class, maybe if it was a pronunciation thing, I'd like to do that. But I don't want to distract them by being there myself. I just want them to focus on the writing.
Yep, valid point.
Yeah, but for rapport, I think it would be nice. But I do have other things that I do for rapport. So yeah.
Nothing else in the chat and nothing else in the list. Louise, you're good to go.
Okay, so the next part I wanted to talk about was my speaking classes. And obviously when I heard we're going online, my speaking classes were a concern because I wanted to know how I was going to run them. And as I said in the intro video, one of the things that I've been doing for a while is a discussion project. And I've been doing this for years face-to-face. And there are different roles in the discussion. And I wondered how I would make that work online. So first of all, I want to have a look at how I normally ran the discussion project. So I'm going to screen share again.
Quick question from chat, Louise.
Have a chat question.
Yeah,
Does
quick.
Screencast-O-Matic record sound now? I might have a, yeah, record sound. Yep, it does. So maybe update. I only started using it in April and it's been working fine since then. Okay, so I'm going to go on. Okay, so there are some different roles that I have for the students in my class, and you have the discussion leader, and they have some jobs to do before the class begins. So I want the students to discover ways to communicate about things that interest them, and so I give them autonomy on what they can talk about. We have parts of the course that focus on topics that are in the textbook, but for this project, it's something that they can work on their own interests for. So they find a news article or a blog post or a YouTube video or something about a topic that interests them. That's step one. Then they have to understand it. So that involves them doing things like reading, watching, listening, so that they do. And then after, sorry, I think something disappeared there. My screen has too much on it right now, guys. Just give me a sec. And then I ask them to imagine they're telling their friends about it. And they should really, some of them are taking really long articles, and at the beginning they want to talk for 3 minutes or 4 minutes about it. I really want them to try and do it in 60 seconds. If they can't do it in 60, to spend no more than 90 seconds briefly summarizing it. And they record themselves doing that. And then they listen to their description, and they have to see how they can improve. What kind of vocabulary do they need to talk about it? And they check those words. Can they do it fluently? And then they practice a few more times. So this is all before they actually come and do their discussion. Then after that, they have to think about their teammates, the people who have the discussion with them. So they have to think about which words that their listeners would need help with, and they make a vocab list for their classmates. They can do that with synonyms or easy descriptions or with translations. And then they come up with a set of questions to guide the discussion, and they have them there for themselves so that they don't freeze at points when the discussion becomes quiet. So this is the preparation of the leader. And then in class, what they need to do is introduce their basic topic, tell everybody, today we're talking about blah, and then share the word list. And then after that, they describe their topic briefly. Then they share their views and elicit group members' views about the topic, and they use their question list to keep the discussion going. So this is the basic job of the leader. And in the class, so I have, for example, this year I had a class of 18 for my speaking class. And so I would have 4 groups. That means that there are 4 leaders. And the leader will do the same topic with different groups. And this is for the leader to be able to build fluency with the topic that they researched, and to hear different opinions from different groups, and to build confidence in talking about something. So when they go to each group, in the first group, they don't need a note taker. In the first group, the leader is with their group, so they don't need a note taker. But when they go to the second group, there's one person who will be taking notes. And the note taker takes notes when the leader introduces the topic and records some key points throughout the discussion, tries to note at least one thing from each group member. And then eventually at the end, usually we have a 4 discussion rotation. After the leader has been to 3 other groups and comes back, the note taker tells the original leader about what the other leaders introduced. Does that make sense so far?
Makes sense to me.
Yeah. Okay, so let's continue on. Hang on. Okay, we'll stop there. Okay, so when they're doing this, I was thinking to myself, you know, you've got the leader, you've got the note taker, and you've got other participants in each group. So you've got 4 or 5 people in each group. In a classroom, the leader just stands up and goes to another group and the rest of the group remains. How am I going to do that? Well, of course, I'm going to do it through breakout rooms. But even doing it through breakout rooms is kind of cumbersome because at first I would sit there with the groups and I would write down the names of the leaders. It's like, I don't know, Aki, Maho, 3, 4. And then I have to put little arrows to show myself where the leader's going and then manually change the leader over. And I think, okay, I can manage that. But then how are students going to know when it's time? Okay, there's a broadcast function. I use the broadcast function a minute before saying leaders are going to swap soon. Okay, and how will I know if any of the students are stuck? Okay, they have to be told right at the start to use the call for help button. They need to learn how to do that. Okay, how do I know the students are staying in English during the discussions? Okay, well, obviously I'm going to go from group to group and check out things. And how am I going to give feedback? Well, the same way. So I just got a system going with the students of making it very clear the purpose of the leader doing it multiple times and the purpose of the note taker and the kind of pressure that the leader might be feeling if nobody speaks. And the groups came together quite well. And the first week, the leaders worked really hard and did a fabulous job, and they were really nervous, and they told everybody before it, oh, I'm so nervous. And so the other students were really supportive of that. And I made some mistakes sending people to the wrong rooms that first week, and I improved the second week and got a good system for keeping track of who needs to go where and sending out broadcast information in the right time with enough time for them to get it. And I did some checking with the students, and they generally said to me, oh, we'd like to know about a minute before we are finishing. And so I would generally allow 10 minutes for the discussion because you've got the vocabulary and you've got the brief intro. So I'd wait about 10 minutes and then I would press a button and say, in about a minute, I'm going to swap the leaders over. And at the end, when the leaders went back to their original group, I allowed time for the note takers to tell the leaders what they'd missed in the other 3 discussions. And then I got them to go to Flipgrid. And that's when they could have one-to-one time to talk about it. So Flipgrid, I set it up like this.
Question in chat, Louise?
Yeah.
So the leader has to come to class prepared. Have you ever had students who did not prepare? If so, what happens then?
There wasn't a student who didn't prepare, but there was a student who slept in and he turned up late, and then we started doing something else because I figured he was coming. He'd often just go from his bed to the computer. So I thought, oh, he's probably there. And I asked someone to line him, and they lined him and he came. But if that had happened, then, and it has happened in classes before, in physical classes, a leader hasn't turned up, then I've always had a default topic ready myself. And I would say, okay, in the round that you don't have the leader there, you're going to talk about this. And I generally make it about some kind of familiar topic that we touched on in class before, but that we hadn't looked at in a lot of depth. So that's a nice kind of plan B if you do get stuck. Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna share Flipgrid now. And I mean, I can't share what the students did, but I will show you. I set up Flipgrid. Can you guys just give me a thumbs up if you've used Flipgrid before? I know there have been some sessions on it during the OTJ. Yes? Okay. Well, Flipgrid.com, if you haven't used it, is something that can be used for sharing video messages. And it creates a little community. I've got mine so it's private and can't be seen outside of it. But you can have it as something that you use to communicate to the whole world and have it public. And not only can you make videos yourself, you can receive videos as comments. So it becomes like, imagine like a Facebook chat, but it's all video. It's like that. And so I set up different topics and I will just kind of show you.
Louise, one more from chat.
Yeah.
About from 1 minute ago. Only the leader reads the article, correct?
Yes, that's right. And then they summarize it. So they go, they get the information, they come to class and they say what they had found. Yeah, they don't share the article. And it might not have been an article. It might have been a YouTube video. It might have been a podcast they listen to. They just have to find a topic they're interested in and discover some new information about it and bring that topic to class. There've been all kinds of topics. One of the students did something on why are there not female sushi chefs? And another one did something on reading manga versus reading literature, you know. And so there's been lots of different topics in there, and more simple ones about, you know, should the Olympics be held next year or not? And articles. So current topics, things that they're interested in. Okay, I'm going to go back to the Flipgrid. So you can see on here, I have my code as Ohashi, and then I've set it up so that each student just has to, they've got the app on their phone, most of them, they had an option of downloading it, but if not, they just come to Flipgrid and they can go into that code. Initially, you can see there's a QR code here. At the beginning, I put that into a document so they could just, while they're watching Zoom, I could see them all holding their phones up and QR coding it until they were able to find my particular Flipgrid. And you can see here that I've got a whole load of topics. So at the beginning, I got them just to introduce themselves. So they were able to put in a video about themselves as an introduction. And you can see there were 40 videos there. I only have 18 students in this class, which means some of them replied to each other. And this elevator pitch was something that was part of the textbook. You needed to give an elevator pitch for a new app you'd created. So I integrated it into the textbook tasks, the same here. And then they were kind of used to it. We shared the midterm presentations through here. And there's a setting where you can hide the videos if you are the admin. So I hid all the videos until the class. And then we did a watch party in the class, and we would put them up one by one. And the students, while they were watching, were using a different app to give feedback. And so I had a small rubric for them to use. And then I asked them to write a nice comment to each presenter. And when I gave back the feedback for the grades, I included that for each student so that they had all of these warm, fuzzy comments from their classmates as well. It was interesting for me too, because I could see if they had the same impressions of the sessions that I'd been watching as a teacher. But this is, yeah.
Sorry, two more from Scott McClellan. Do the sources have to be in English?
No, I don't mind if they're English or Japanese.
Okay, one more from Julie Torgerson. What level are the students?
I've done this project with lots of levels, like TOEIC 400, I guess, in some face-to-face classes. And now I'd say I'm dealing with TOEIC 700-ish. So, but it's worked with a lot of different ranges, yeah. So yeah, getting to the Flipgrid part that's actually about the discussions, what I did was put up week 1 reflection. And I put these instructions. If you were a leader, speak about your experience. If you were a participant, speak about one of the discussions you participated in today. And then they have an option to talk for 90 seconds. You can put it to whatever limit you like, and I put it as 90 seconds. I thought it's a low hurdle, but you know, you have to listen to them at the end of the day. You don't want it to be a long, like never-ending series of, well, in today's discussion. And one of the reasons I wanted them to have the chance to reflect here is because I thought, it might be a nice way for the leaders to realize how much their classmates appreciated what they've done. And for the people who are not leaders to get ideas from the reflection of the leaders. And for me to understand what kind of experience it was for the students. And I found that the students were so encouraging. And obviously I wanted to use this as an extra speaking opportunity. Some of the students were much, much more talkative in the discussions than others, but this gives them their own time. So they're engaging with the topics that they talked about without the pressure of anybody else trying to get a word in. So I thought it might be a way for students to be able to engage with the topics in a different way if they weren't able to do it as well during the discussion. And I found that all the students were able to take advantage of this opportunity and do that. I also had a chance to listen to each student, and often I would just listen while I was cooking dinner. So it was something that allowed me to get through the work while still going about my daily life and not getting overwhelmed. And that's something I said to you at the beginning. I wanted to not get overwhelmed by all this tech I was bringing into my life, but still maintain some form of engagement, some form of rapport, some feeling of knowing my students. And this really helped me a lot to do that in a one-to-one kind of way. Yeah. Any questions about this one? I mean, I think if you want to know more about Flipgrid itself, go back and check out some of the awesome workshops that have already been done on it. I don't need to rehash that for you guys. Do the leaders need to have something written for the group members? They just need to have the vocab list written. Yeah, and they do that as a screen share. And some of them, I never asked them to do this, but some of them started making slides and putting in images, and yeah, they were really creative. Some of them were adding music. It was really, really interesting. Give them options and they will pleasantly surprise you. My background is in learner autonomy, and I'm always looking for ways to foster it. Yeah. So one other thing, I said that I would maybe show some other things if there were time. There's not so much time, but one of the things that I wanted to share that helped me and students keep on track is just using a really simple document that I'd been using for years myself to keep track of things, but I think in this online environment, it's even more important. So I'll screen share one more time. I've been using Dropbox for years and just taking a simple document with a date down the end, and then in class and homework, 2 columns. And it's super simple, but when you don't have a whiteboard that you're writing information on and students are getting their phone out and photographing, then you can't be sure everybody's got your information. So it's been really useful. I'll just share briefly what it looks like in my TOEFL class. So here we go. At the top of it, I just put the blurb about how things had changed. That's not the important bit. The important bit was here, where each class, I would kind of color code from day to day so they could easily find it, what we were doing, and so when we were supposed to be studying. And I would put in any videos or any additional kind of worksheets that I had as links, hyperlinks. So it just took 1 click for them to get there, because I shared some stuff on the LMS, the in-house learner management system, but the students were really overwhelmed in April and getting lost inside it, even when it was written in Japanese and they had so many different classes. So I had originally created everything in my Dropbox anyway, or in my YouTube account, so it was just as easy to put the links here as well. So I did things like told them, you know, in class here, what we were doing, and for homework what to do. And then just, you can see it goes down and down like this each week, what they need to do. And I numbered it for them so that there were things that they knew how many tasks they needed to do. They knew what was required of them each time, and they could get there with just a click. So generally I found that if students at the beginning were asking me about homework, I did get a few messages right at the beginning of the course. What do I need to do, or I'm not sure about this? I just copied the link to that document and said, look at today's date and you can check this information. And the questions dried up right at the start. I'm talking like week 2, they're done. They know what to do, they know where to go. And it was really helpful for me. So it's a simple admin tool, but could be useful for you. Any questions?
Not at this point, Louise.
Okay. Well, we have just a few minutes left, and I said I'd like to hear some ideas from you guys as well. So if somebody has something to share about how they took something that they were doing face-to-face and they brought it into our new virtual world, share away.
Invite you to open your mic and bring your question straight to voice. Or if you're shy, you can raise your hand in the participants list. I know that all of you are such shy people. And Charles Brown, yep, you're a shy guy. Scott McClellan.
Hi, yeah, so I think I might have mentioned this before in another group, but I don't know if anybody's used a Dictogloss activity before. kind of like a 4 skills, listening, writing, and speaking activity, where there's basically a shorter, longer passage in audio, and the students have to listen to it first and then take notes, and then they share notes in part with a partner, and then they share notes with a group, and then in a bigger group at the end, after listening to it 3 or 4 times, they recreate the text. And it's kind of a bit of a 4 skills activity. This works really well in Zoom because of the groups. You can really easily shuffle people around, and they're sharing their notes with each other each time in groups that get gradually and gradually bigger until they can recreate the text together. This works well in Zoom, and better than in the classroom, actually. So I'd recommend that. Dictogloss.
Thanks for sharing. As you're talking about the groups, that just suddenly reminded me of something I read late last night. Apparently from September, Zoom is going to allow people to move between breakout rooms with their own free will. This is a good thing. Yeah. The group leaders will be able to go to the next room by themselves when I just send a message, group leaders, next room, I'm off the hook. But think about, you know, if you're wanting to run some kind of activities where you want students to go to do something that interests them, or that they haven't finished yet, or that they need more help with, you can separate them and they can make their own choices on that. So I think this is wonderful.
Glenn, you didn't want to ask your question?
Well, I was just going to bring up a couple of things that I had done here in the past for reading or writing classes. And one of them is kind of a time saver. I don't want to put the kids into a breakout room just for half a minute, which is what I normally would have given. But for example, I would say in a business letter writing class, first day, ask the kids, what type of situations are there for writing a business letter? Normally I would have them paired up and they would just talk for 30 seconds. But with our Moodle system and with Zoom, you could just tell them, type it into the chat. And you give them a few seconds and comment about it. Or like if I would give them something about subject lines for email, I'd give them a worksheet, Microsoft Word worksheet, and I would just say, you got 2 minutes. Put your comments down on these that I've given you, and you get to keep the document. It's just not an assignment, but let's just work on it for 2 minutes, and then I will go through and show you on the screen why I say these are bad subject lines, or what the salutations should be for these situations. But use an MS Word document just for those quickie things.
Yeah, that sounds really useful.
Okay,
Sorry,
Steve Henneberry, I got you, Charlie. I'm sorry, Louise.
I was just reading through the chat. I just wanted to point something out. Lisa said nice visuals, and I think that was about the part that explains the roles of the leader and the and I use that to make sure that students understand they have
Bad
in
connection.
their screenshot if they want, so they remember it after the class. And I also, after I've explained to them the roles of person, I get to go to a breakout room and say, okay, tell me, what does the leader need to do? What does the note taker need to do? And then we come back to the main room. And so I do that checking before we start project as well. And I think that's a really important step. Go ahead, Steve.
No, I was just going to say, when you asked about activities that that we've used in class and continue to use in online, one of the things that my students rated as one of their favorite activities is something I always do every week in Monday classes. The first 2 minutes, I put them with a partner and just have them have this very simple conversation. How was your weekend? Where did you go? What did you do? And in the beginning of class, I will do this. I'll put them in breakout rooms. It's like you have 2 minutes to have this conversation. And the whole goal is, like you said with the discussion leaders, like I really like the idea of student experts, where the students come into the conversation as an expert. And of course, you're always the expert on your own weekend. But this, I think, was really important just because also the social isolation. It helped get the students to get to know each other and get to speak with each other and get to share a little bit of their experiences. But at the end of the semester, I asked them what activities they enjoyed most, and most students chose that.
Louise.
Yeah, give opportunities for
There
them
she
to
is.
communicate about things that are connected to their actual lives.
Oops, I think we got a bad connection still.
Yeah, she does.
So
So just
we
hang tough,
hit
everyone.
7, and I know there's a session on at 7, right? So
Yeah, there is a session on at 7.
can you hear
So
me?
if yep, we barely, but I'll just take over for a second. Oh, there you are. There is a session on at 7, everyone. And if you need to leave, you're quite welcome to. Otherwise, we'll hang on here for a little bit. Louise,
Yeah,
you're back.
this is great. That was anyway, great session. And you know, if there's time, I'll make a comment. But.
Yeah, just a couple of the activities that I thought were worthwhile that I'll be continuing next semester.
Okay. Well, actually, what I was going to say, it's nothing at all, you know, groundbreaking, but you know, just when I'm teaching face to face, I usually, you know, some of my classes are like 30, 40 students. This is for teacher training. And I'm very, you know, to me, it's very important, you know, to hear their voices, to hear their opinions. And it's hard to do in a class of 30 or 40 students. So I often, I know they're reluctant, especially the second year students, they're very reluctant to say anything. So I almost always, I put them in groups of 4 or 5 and say, whatever the task, whatever the question, first talk it over in a group of 4 or 5, and then be ready to have one of them present to the whole class. And that's been a way to, you know, non-threatening way to give them time to rehearse, to get their opinions out, to talk amongst themselves, and then to build confidence, you know, talking in front of the class. And I just found that the breakout rooms, you know, work perfectly for that. It just is like an effortless transition. The same kind of tasks that I'm using in face-to-face classes, you know, if I just put them in a breakout room, you know, give them a very clear task and say, you know, 15 minutes, one person from your group, we're going to all come back together as a class in Zoom. You know, after 15 minutes, one of you is going to present for your whole class. And it works. It motivates them to speak a lot in the breakout rooms, and the kind of presentations that they're making to the whole Zoom class. Personally, I'm finding in some ways are even better. The individual group discussions are better, and the whole class presentations are better. So there's something actually about Zoom that, you know, this kind of effort that I'm making to be like kind of a humanistic, student-centered, you know, get the students to speak out. I'm always making that approach, and not always successful in doing it in face-to-face large classes. But for some reason, it just works better in Zoom. That maybe they're having less chances to speak in their real lives, or maybe it's because they're, you know, just in these small digital groups, it works better. But I've been, you know, I've been astonished actually sometimes at how good things are, you know, are going in some of the Zoom classes.
I think it's because they're all front and center, and they don't have the distractions of other groups around them. So when you're in that breakout room, you're in a bubble. And,
yes.
And all the faces are at the same, you know, nobody's sitting at the back of the classroom. Everybody's there. And when somebody's not participating, it's different somehow, because they don't have anywhere to run away to. And
well, you know, Louise, actually that makes me think of something, is that, you know, when, you know, I try to be very non-obtrusive in face-to-face classes, non-threatening, and just sort of listen and eavesdrop and try and encourage them. But there does seem to be a little bit of falling off and a bit of silence, and oh my gosh, the teacher is close by. But that happens much less in, you know, in Zoom for some reason. I could be popping into, you know, breakout room number 3, and they don't stop talking, and they, you know, and I can just, I kind of sit there a little. There's some kind of dynamic that is less, it's less threatening. It's very nice.
Too. Like you can, when I go from Zoom room to Zoom room, there's a different atmosphere in the different rooms. And in the classroom, you don't have that because the room's atmosphere dominates. But in the room, sometimes I go in and they're all laughing, like, oh, I found the happy room. And they laugh more. And then other times I go into a room and it's really quiet, like, hey guys, what's going on? So
okay, I got a question from Julie. Sorry, Louise. I got a question from Julie. Julie says, or asks, or says, I'm curious about which classes school students use their videos. Most of mine don't, but many students want to see other faces.
Mine do. They choose to. I work at 2 universities, Meiji and Gakushuin, and when they're in the breakout rooms, they all have their videos on, or most of the time. Sometimes they have Wi-Fi issues, or maybe they have bad hair day issues. I don't know, but sometimes they occasionally turn them off. But for the most time, they're on. And some of them keep them on when we're in the main room, but often they do that after they've come back. So in the morning, it's not on, or at the beginning of class, it's not on. And then they go off into a session and they come back, and some of them keep it on, some of them turn it off.
Well, I know I'm asking too, because like 2 of my 3 schools, it was kind of a policy that for students to keep their videos off, except maybe briefly, like in breakout rooms or something like that. So mine have kind of taken that as a reason to not keep their videos on. And
isn't that horrible? Let's purposely make the, sabotage the lessons and make them worse, by making school policy.
I am so depressed because I can't see my student faces this semester, right?
Well, I think a lot of universities actually implemented policy because of the Wi-Fi restrictions.
I
of
understand
students.
that.
And it was a bandwidth issue. Personally, I don't agree with it because I want to see all my students' faces all the time. Just because.
2 quick points about that, though, Steve. One is that you can help alleviate the bandwidth issue when using Zoom by turning off the HD checkbox in the settings, and that greatly decreases the bandwidth required for students. I think that's something that we all should be doing. Because that makes it easier for them. I do. Yeah. And then the other thing is rather than making it required that they turn on the cameras, it's a matter, I think, also of creating tasks that will be much more interesting and fun if they do. So if you create that atmosphere and create tasks that kind of encourage them to interact with their cameras on, I think it happens more often.
You also want to, if you're having bandwidth problems or students that have bandwidth problems, if they are using gallery view, encourage them, if they're having bandwidth problems, to stick with speaker view. Gallery view increases bandwidth usage according to the number of screens that are visible. Every single one of those screens are actually full bandwidth, even though they're kind of tiny. And just one thing about what Charlie said about HD. Yeah, definitely don't check it, but actually default is that it's not on. But make sure that it isn't on in case you might have made a mistake and turned it on.
Yeah, but students are going to have problems like I am now. I have family in another room. They're eating dinner. They got the television on. I can't go down that end of the house.
Right.
And my Wi-Fi is just not working well right now. And in times like this, students will want to turn off their video.
Yeah.
Yep. And Scott McClellan.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think whether students turn on their video or not too has a lot to do with the mood we set at the beginning. If you've had a class or 2 where you haven't required it, good luck changing things halfway through this. And I honestly think if you kind of go in with a plan and you tell them what's expected of them, then, it's not sprung on them suddenly. So I kind of said to them, cameras off are fine in the main room, but in breakout rooms, cameras have to be on. And I haven't had any issue with that because it seemed to be a pretty good compromise. They know I'm not going to start class with the cameras on. They have some time to prepare. But I don't know. I think if you've chosen one way, it's really hard to get them to switch because there's the expectation now.
Okay, everyone, this has been a great session. I don't know if this is actually a call for dinner from Louise that says that we got to go, but Louise is hungry, it looks like.
Yeah, they're waiting for me.
Okay, so I think that's about it for this session, unless you want to look at my face, which I wouldn't. Anyway, been a great session, Louise. Fantastic job. Everyone, please come to the OTJ Social tonight in less than an hour. I can't wait. Beer is going to be so good. But before then, why don't you join Sam Kawakami?
Yeah, I'll be there. I'll be
and take in the very last session for the OTJ Summer Sessions of 2020. See you guys in a bit. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Louise.
Bye.